Let's get rolling on this. It's episode 20 of Critical Listening. Welcome, everyone. My name is Max Alper.
My name is Liz Pelly. Wow,
Li-
Max, congrats. Episode 20. We did it.
Episode 20. We
That's
did
pretty
it.
good.
This is
Cool.
slow cinema. This is slow burn. We're not churning out content.
But at 20, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, come
Stuff.
on, man.
And it's a
This
good
is
one, too. We got a
it
good one.
is a good one. We do have a good one. I'm very stoked for
Yeah.
folks to listen to this one. We have Panda Bear and Sonic Boom fresh from their release of A Question of When, just out now, or if you're listening to this a few weeks ago, from Domino Recording Company. And it's a great record, and we wanted them on for a particular reason, though, didn't we, Liz?
I'm sure many people listening are familiar with Panda Bear of Animal Collective and Sonic Boom, who also was in Spacemen 3. But yeah, they have a new record out, and we were excited to talk to them because the new record that they recently released, A Question of When, is not on streaming services. And since the beginning of this show, something that we'd always been interested in doing is maybe a sort of series where we're interviewing musicians who are divesting from tech platforms, divesting from certain ways of releasing their records, like streaming. So it was really interesting to finally get to have a conversation like that. We've had some conversations sort of in the spirit, but this was really like a full conversation, primarily dedicated to discussing, what went into their decision to not release the album on streaming services, how they got their label on board, what the conversations with their record label team was like, and more.
Yeah, and also this, question of, as two heavy artists in the world of experimental sampling, getting into even the question of generative AI. We have to tie it back in with the current events, and they have some good thoughts. Multiple times when Peter Sonic Boom was speaking, I just wanted to be like, this sounds exactly like episode 4 when we were talking about this. It's of course I managed to sneak in music is social slogan drop in there, because we're talking about that. We're talking about making friends, going out, listening, picking things at a record store, being recommended songs or albums by your friends, and not being into it at first, but trusting your friend and giving it another shot, and suddenly falling in love with something. And this is felt like the right artist to chat about this with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was like particularly interested in, the conversation of how their label got on board because they're on Domino. One of the questions that I had was just sort of like, are we fully at the point where legacy indies feel like they can successfully market and monetize a record without streaming? That like, maybe they're even like excited that an artist has decided that they don't want their music to be on streaming because it gives them an opportunity to like, try out other things. And that was really interesting to hear a little bit about, get their perspective on, hear how their experience went with it. I am like a little bit, I personally am like, I would love to be like in a record label meeting where people from like a large indie label are kind of like talking about like IRL marketing schemes and like how we're gonna like, get this in front of people in the real world. Like, not to be cynical about it because obviously this is a really great conversation.
Yeah,
But I also feel like that would be like a very interesting meeting to be a fly on the wall for sure.
absolutely. I mean, it's all optics, right? It's all marketing. It's just whether it's digital or IRL, or at this point, like standard channels of communications versus going back to more old school traditional ways like flyering, wheat pasting. They were talking about putting up physical flyers, and but also, they talk about social media can still be used for things. But I like that they discussed they only post when there's something happening in real life that they want you to go to. And it's like, I always have felt that social media and the internet at large should be that sort of launch pad to something in the physical world, something to get you out of the house. That's how I used to feel like when I didn't have a smartphone. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Facebook, that's a computer thing at home. and then I'm gonna go
I mean,
outside.
one of my favorite bands of all time, the Minutemen, would say that their records were literally, they were like, the record is the flyer. The point of having a record is to get you to the show.
Hell
And
yeah.
at least like, in certain sort of musical traditions, I still think about that
Totally.
all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. They even mention, where you listen to a record too. So even if it's not a show, but like the listening party context, is it could be just as important for certain people to discover something or to meet people, things like that.
Mhm.
So we get into all of this and more. So we're just gonna hop right in, folks. How about it?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, since we launched the show, we actually had been wanting to do a series on divestors, like, people who are divesting from technology that they feel is like at odds with their politics or just uninspiring or, divesting from certain systems, reinvesting in others. Perhaps for a brief bit of context before we get into your decision to not release your album on streaming, just to start, can you, by way of introduction, just tell us a little bit about how the two of you met and what has inspired your collaborations over the years?
We met because a now a friend of both of ours, Nick Kramer, he was a fan of a record I did, and Pete heard it at a party at his house, and Nick told him that I had put Spacemen 3 and Spectrum as kind of influences or stuff that I really liked in the liner notes. And then Pete wrote to me saying he dug it, and maybe we could play a show together or something. And we just kind of started talking from there.
When I got in touch with him to say how much I loved his album, and thanks for the giving me a little credit on the sleeve, or a nod of the tip of the hat, as it were. But that I would be really interested in, if you ever wanted to do anything, do some shows or do something collaborative or whatever, I would be interested, very interested. And so, yeah, and actually at that time, when I said that to Noah, he said, I don't know if I'm going to do any more Panda Bear stuff. I don't know. It's, which I was obviously like, you need to keep doing Panda Bear.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you were so, because
It does sound like me, though.
yeah, a person pitch I think had been so intense, and the success of it was so. I think you were a little over all the hassle, the attention, but and then I guess when Noah started, he the Tomboy album that I worked on. I didn't produce. Noah made all those tracks, and actually, pretty much nearly all the songs that are on the album came out as singles first. But Noah had mixed, and they wanted to do some different mixes for the LP, and that's when he got in touch with me.
You don't really hear that, the separate single mix versus the LP mix. That's awesome. Very interesting collaboration sort of beginning.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I remember where I was when the email came through, and I was super psyched at the prospect of it, and it was an awesome record to work on, I have to say.
And then you moved here to Portugal.
Yeah, well, that was after Grim Reaper. Then there was the Grim Reaper album where you asked me to produce it, or again, I mean, that was Noah sent me, he said, oh, I'm making this record, and I was like, he said, I don't know if you'll be into it, and he sent me the tracks, or a lot of the tracks that would be on the album, and I got back to him and said, I love this stuff, I'd be super interested, and he's like, okay, let's do it, let's go into a studio in Lisbon, and then from being here working with Noah was why I wanted to move here because I just loved Portugal. And I love the vibe here. I liked how different the way of life was here, how old-fashioned it was in many ways.
Mhm.
It feels like it's going away a little bit, don't you think, Pete?
Yeah, well, nothing lasts forever, that's for sure. And I knew even the area that I live in here, it's just this, sublime beauty spot. I know from my life that when I find something I really love, to really appreciate it, because it ain't gonna last forever. It could be a bar I like, it could be where I like living, and sure enough, in 10 years, it's changed here it's been enshittified, unfortunately. I still really love it here, but I liked it more when the influencers hadn't lit the place up with tourism in quite the
Right.
same way.
Mhm. I always appreciate when people use words like enshittification to talk about things happening in physical space around them, because a lot of these things that we feel like are just playing out online are actually all in our real life world too, you know?
Yeah, they are, and of course there's these are directly related, because it's the influences are to a man or a gal, or online. They're all social media essentially. Yeah.
It works both ways though, because I feel like there'll be times where I'll see discussions online where people, it seems like everybody's against or for this thing, or they're really angry about whatever it is, and I don't see it when I go outside, or when I talk to people out there. I don't really. They're like, "What? I don't know
Yeah.
what you're talking about." And I was like, "I thought everybody was talking about this." I feel like it can be sort of deceiving insofar as it sometimes, when the way the algorithms work, and it sort of pumps all this stuff at you, or if it knows that you have looked at something for more than a couple seconds, it gives you 100 more discussions like that, and it's easy to think that some of this stuff is kind of just everywhere when it's not. But you're right that it goes
For
the other way
sure.
too.
It's like the cortisol levels on the internet are much different than in real life. But unfortunately, the internet bleeds out into the enshittification has bled out in some ways to the real world. I think that's a good segue. We are very interested in your decision to not release your album. A question of when on streaming platforms specifically. So can you tell us a bit of when the seeds of this idea were first planted? Were these decisions based on some previous release strategies of yours, or more related to the industry norms at large? What were the pros and cons of weighing this decision, you think?
Kind of all of the above, wouldn't you say, Pete? I mean, I feel like the big push for it came after we'd finished the thing and we're really kind of talking about some of the themes that we felt like were on the record, or what a lot of the songs were kind of talking about or referencing. But also we'd had conversations about this sort of stuff for a long time before this. It just sort of felt like, and it feels a bit like an experiment to me. I have a lot of other stuff that's still on streaming. There's other bands that I've seen have just kind of completely removed. So I don't know that we're changing the world or like heroes or anything, but it did, in light of like what we felt like was going on with the music, it did kind of feel like uh, not having the thing on streaming sort of jibed with all that.
Could you give us an example? Is there like a song on the record that you feel like thematically really speaks to the decision that you made with its release?
I think the song "A Question of When" is pretty good for that. There's like a sense that something is coming, or things are sort of deteriorating, or like you could kind of feel this sort of unrest and chaos out there, but there's a sense of defiance about it, or wanting to be kind of hopeful or aiming towards something that feels positive in some way. So us doing this with the record, and there's other songs where it seems to talk about people getting together or trying to like experience something real together. Um, not that everything online isn't real, but I think people need people, and it feels like we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit, or forgotten that a little bit.
I think that's one thing that we talked about though, that, and it was the same on Reset, where we had songs about overconnectivity and our apparent what's the word, total ignorance of not ignorance, but not having dealt with things that should have been dealt with a long time ago, things being let to run, particularly in the digital world has always been the Wild West initially, and eventually it usually gets legislated for, but it always starts off with this crazy free for all shit. So yeah, I think A Question of When is definitely the track that epitomizes this sense that something's going to change. You can feel it in the air. It's and that's really where the album title of it. We believe it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and it seems like it's. I mean, you see it all around the world, and it's been really interesting. The reaction to this way of doing the record has been really, really positive, and we particularly decided we wanted to point ourselves at things like radio, press, particularly where it actually exists, real press, real paper magazines, and for people to really, anything to really pull people away and not give another excuse for being online. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people, I think, are on the same page about this.
Absolutely.
Just to dig into it a little bit more, like, what were some of the pros and cons you were weighing when deciding this? Because, we get this question from people all the time, like artists who are thinking about not putting their record on streaming. And I know that they're, it's just, for some people, it's the most obvious thing in the world. But, like, I know that there's also considerations that have to be made.
Yeah, I mean, a con was certainly that we knew there was going to be people who only listen to music via streaming and maybe don't have the means to get the physical thing, which is a drag, of course. We were told that a big chunk of our earnings for the thing would probably be gone. Those are the two big cons that I feel like we talked about. But
I have to say, in favor of everyone involved, including the record company, it was not an issue. For us, wasn't a question. It was like, this is what we believe in. If we believe that these things are toxifying culture and are a toxic environment and abuse artists and musicians, if we believe that, then we have to follow what we believe. And if that means potentially less earnings, we'll take that risk. And the record company were totally no problem with it at all, which is, I have to give them props for that.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about how you got them on board. Like, what did the conversations with Domino look like? Like, did you just email them and tell them we don't want to put our album on streaming, or was it more of like a conversation?
we kind of just said, this is what we want to do, and they said okay. I feel like
Awesome.
they're also looking for kind of a new alternative, or to me, there's this sense that the way things are with music is not really working for most people, and I feel like there's been kind of attempts at finding new ways of doing the thing. Nothing's really stuck yet, but I feel like Domino was open to it because I think they too are kind of looking for a kind of like a new way to get the thing done.
And not just as a label, not just on a financial level. I have to say, from working closely with a whole load of people at Domino, the people who work there are really into the idea of it, and are really. It is doing this sort of IRL promo campaign. Has been more work, no question about it. But I have to say, I've enjoyed it much more than doing less work. And it seems all the people at the label is just super into the concept of it and the idea, and trying these different things. And and doing things that no one's done for 25 years, which, I mean, I Noah's old enough to remember, and I certainly am. But these are slightly younger people, and so this is all new to them. And even the girl who her thing is really the social media thing, is super supportive of it, and it's not like we've stopped using social media, but we've seriously clamped it down, and it's really hard because so much of the record industry now does all its promotion through social media, and it's the most cost-effective way you can do it. But yeah, they've been very supportive, and even we wanted to do things like posters on streets rather than have pictures on screens, and they've been, which is more expensive to do, but they've been very supportive of it. And I have to say, the sales figures that I saw recently were nearly double what they were for Reset, without any videos, any social media, and people are going out and buying the record. And I see people send me comments of people that wouldn't have done it before because they didn't need to, went out and bought the record, and they can buy the CD or the cassette. I mean, it's probably like $12 or something. It's really, it's less than a sandwich or something. It really is for what you're getting. It's really not an expensive thing. And there are some people who think that all music from all time should be consumable for free, which I believe has had a really not great effect on culture as well. But I think that's a sort of acceptable damage. Those people aren't going to like it, but I feel they're not really bought into consuming it. It's very sort of, if they're not prepared to throw down, just over $10, then I can't feel too sorry for them.
Plus, we're very pro actual piracy here on this on this podcast, and it's like if you can't figure it out like the good old days of the internet, I don't know what to tell you.
That's another thing we talked about, was the assumption that somebody was going to throw it up on YouTube or something, so that these people who might not feel like they could get a physical copy would still be able to hear. We kind of assumed and sort of hoped that would take place, and I think it has.
You can find the files to download if you want it, and someone put it up on YouTube. And we're not so we're not trying to be mean to people with this. We're really not. But I just pointing people at the difference between consuming something through the worst of the streaming, the largest and worst of the streaming platforms, versus going into a record store, meeting people, making direct connections with people. It's a whole different world. And this is how bands used to form, because people went to a record store and they met some other person just like them at the record store. They both liked the same records, and they were like, let's form a band. This doesn't happen from streaming on Spotify. Yep. I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's really interesting too that, like, in addition to not putting the record on streaming, that you're also sort of like reconsidering the use of social media too, because I feel like we're just like going on, decades now of being like told this narrative, also as a journalist, like, oh, like we're supposed to meet people where they're at. And like, even if you hate using social media, this is where people consume information, and like you're, not meeting people where they're at if you're not using it. But increasingly, I also just feel like you're directly contributing to like brain rot and people's like addictions to short form content if you're like feeding into this. So encouraging people instead to go get their information from, like you mentioned, radio, and doing more interviews with magazines, and encouraging people to like go out into their community and like seek out a local record store. It's like, I don't know, it just feels like a much more meaningful contribution to make than like giving someone a series of 2-minute video clips to listen to and waste another half hour of their life.
Yeah.
The itch to not turn it into content, I think, is commendable here. Whether it be short form video or just an overabundance of posts and stuff like that. I think that even going to the street team angle of physical flyering and wheat paste and stuff like that, it's like if the people want to find you, they're gonna seek you out.
We are using social media, but the bar that we've set for it is that it really needs to be promoting something that's happening in real life. If it's for a show or a record store party, or if it's for something where it's, or even a radio show that's coming up, if it's something that's actually that kind of, we're still using it for that, but it would be quite tough. I think it'll get easier to, and I have to say that, when we had this conversation with Domino, they said, well, you guys are lucky because you both actually sell physical format anyway, and you are part of that bracket of bands where they do pretty good. That 2/3 of your sales are from physical formats anyway. So that probably made it a bit easier for them. It's also, as Noah was saying, it's an experiment for them, but I think they gave us good advice about the whole thing. And actually, they were much more hardline about it. I thought we'd have to meet them halfway because they're our partners in business, essentially. But they were more hardline than I was thinking, I think.
What kind of advice did they give you?
Well, for example, I was like, well, do we have it where people can download the tracks from Apple Music? And they were like, no, you know what? You should just don't let any of them have it, because otherwise you get into this sort of, it's going to be more complicated for us, for the label, if we're seen to be favoring certain platforms, because we're doing this for a lot of people and a lot of bigger artists as well. So I think they've given us good advice. And actually, they were the first people who went, you know what, I think the press and radio are really going to support you in this. And I had no sense of that at all. I guess it kind of resonated with everyone. And, we did the I'm Unfollowing Panda Bear and Sonic Boom campaign, which was very popular, begat more likes and followers than any other post I ever made, and in some ways totally backfired. And it was kind of interesting that people were really resonating with it and supporting, but then they were following rather than unfollowing.
Can you explain what that was, just for like people who are unfamiliar?
Well, we made bumper stickers. I'm Unfollowing Panda Bear and Sonic Boom, but we posted it as a something, I think, to do with the record store parties, where we gave these bumper stickers and stuff away to people who turned up. We gave them Lucky Charms. We gave them a real metal Lucky Charm. We gave them bumper stickers, and we made a sort of what we call sort of IRL mini paper, real physical news sheet. So yeah, it's when we posted. I forget exactly what it was tied to, but it was to do with the announce of the album and that we were doing these record store parties, I think. Yeah, people, and as soon as I suggested the idea to them at Domino, I have to say they loved the idea.
So they didn't like have any kind of counter proposals when you guys suggested it. So they weren't like, well, what if you left it off streaming for like a month and then put it on eventually or anything? They were like super down.
That was suggested, I think, but
okay.
There wasn't too much resistance, or they definitely were very supportive of the whole thing.
Well, understandably, from a business perspective, they were like, if you want to go back across that bridge, that's fine. Don't blow the bridge up though. Leave that thing open. I mean, personally, for me, I don't want to go back over that bridge. I don't need the bridge, because I have to say I have been one of their biggest unfans since the moment they appeared. And I thought the thing was a massive con right from the start. And that was before they really got toxic and started involving themselves in all sorts of drone weaponry investments and AI bullshit, which I think is another level of shitification.
Something like dreaming, holds unrepeated what I
the sales figures that you gestured towards, I mean, I feel like that really
Yeah.
needs to be emphasized, right? Because I think we're in a moment right now where you mentioned, you know, labels are wanting to try new things. Lots of people in music feel like there's this sort of like media crisis of like, how do you release music in a way that makes sense? Like, no one really knows what to do. So having these examples to point to of instances where certain artists are deciding to not put their albums on streaming, and it's not completely ruining their careers, and it's not completely tanking their ability to actually sell records, you know, that's a meaningful example to be able to point to. Like, it's very helpful to have this type of example to point people towards. Like, do you feel like it's been a successful experiment?
I still feel like it's a little too early to say, but so far so good.
I mean, I feel it has, and I might pay attention to different things about it than Noah, but we've been doing stuff, you know, we've been making idents for radio stations, for example, way beyond what they ask us to give them, actually making a piece of art for them, really. And I have to say, the first station that had it, they were just mind blown by it. They thought it was amazing. And, you know, I guess we sort of knew that. I'm sure some radio stations are streamed as well, but essentially these streaming and radio are at odds with each other anyway, a little bit. They're, you know, they offered a very different way of consumption and a very different model. And I think the radio model is much better. And I'd rather, if I'm going to eat algorithm, so to speak, I'd rather it was cooked by a human than by a computer. And you know, I'd rather someone, a human being's taste than some sort of algorithmic equation, and trying to sort of like predict my taste or something, which I think is really, it's just such a narrowing vision to have. And I mean, Noah particularly has a very wide and expansive taste in music. I don't know how the algorithm can deal with that. You know, I think
It doesn't do it very well. I'll say that.
And you wouldn't want it to do it well either. You know, that would almost be worse.
Well, I feel like that was sort of the idea with this stuff, is like, we're going to be better at giving you stuff that you like than a person could, like a radio DJ or reading reviews in a magazine or something like that. These people are going to choose stuff that they like, and you may not like that. We're going to be better with the algorithm at predicting that the kind of thing that you're really going to be into. But I think that's not the case. It feels like, especially, there's a lot of things I think about friends giving me a record and saying, you might like this, or I really like this, and maybe I didn't like it at first, and grew to like it, or listened to it a couple times over several years, and the fourth or fifth time that I listened to it, I kind of felt something about it that was different than the first couple times. And it feels like the way these systems work now, that sort of thing doesn't allow for that. And I think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, we keep coming back to on this show we keep saying the expression music is social. And I mean, everything that you're talking about here, you know, with friends, listening parties, even the act of just discovering something on the radio via a human curator, DJ, these are all, you know, human to human connections occurring here that, you know, it feels conversational, exactly, that, you know, discovering something on the algorithm feels like antithetical to these experiences that we're discussing here, that, like you said, Noah, like maybe it's your friend recommended it to you, and you weren't necessarily digging it at first, but you really trust this person, so you give it another shot to like see what they see in it, and something might, you know, you might have an aha moment that when you're just constantly scrolling, skipping new tracks on some Monday morning playlist, you're not going to have those experiences, you know?
To be honest, you did come to love my last solo album in the end.
Yeah. I mean, we always talk about too how like the culture of music right now is not exactly ripe for like people allowing things to grow on them, right? Like even we talk about this phrase like no skips album. It's like I don't like the idea of like judging a record by like how quickly you decide you like something, you know, like there I always say that my favorite records are the ones where the first time I listen to it, I'm like, this is horrible. I hate this. And then if it grows on me, then it's a record that's going to be like in my life forever, probably, you know?
Oftentimes, that feeling of rejection is because it's unfamiliar, and I think that's something we've lost a lot. That I think is a big shame. Is
Mhm.
the way the systems are really promote familiarity, things that you already know or that are very similar to stuff that you know. So you don't kind of like grow as easy.
It's also
Mhm.
when you used to have to go out and you scrape together your pocket money and you went out once a month and you're like, okay, I'm going to take a record home with me. Which one's it going to be? And you look over them and there's might be two or three and you take one of them home. You really have an investment in that. And so you're going to persevere with it and you're going to sort of play it at different times to different people um, and with different people. And I think that that's another thing is sometimes who you're listening to
Mm.
music with, and it can play out, and where you're listening to it. It can play out in so many different ways. But I think people don't have the same investment. They don't have the same investment in albums. When Laurie Anderson's "Oh Superman" came out, I really did not fucking get it. I have to tell you, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. This is, and then maybe a year later or something, a friend of mine played me the Big Science album, of which that is kind of the centerpiece. And when I heard it in the context of the whole album, I just thought it was a masterpiece straight away.
I feel like one of the things I think about is like how do we sort of like encourage people to more actively like exist in this state of curiosity where they are more primed to like resist to that feeling of like I don't like this, skip onto the next thing. And
It's
one of the ways that
difficult because it's
Yeah.
so easy. They've
Mhm.
made it so easy. It's kind of hard to, and part of me feels like there's no going back.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm a little bit curious to see with AI music and kind of where that's going. My wager is that streaming will become sort of the arena for that type of strata of music, and I'm guessing that there'll be kind of like a subset of music that's like the organic side, the physical side. So I'm probably quite a bit more optimistic about all that than Pete is, but in general, I feel like maybe I'm a little less hardline than he is about a lot of this stuff. But certainly with the getting people together part of it, I was super on board.
I want to ask just on from the perspective of aspiring artists or artists working in their starting in their careers here, if you have any advice for other musicians who might want to divest from these streaming platforms. There's a big difference between deciding not to stream when you're a younger artist and you're first releasing your record or your first record versus folks such as yourselves who've been doing this for quite a few decades. So what would you say to the younger artist asking this question? Is there still a benefit towards playing the game, so to speak, by industry standards when you're trying to cultivate an audience? How might that differ from someone who already has a dedicated listener base, you think?
I think if you're starting out, you kind of have to play the game. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any other avenue for you, really. I guess the only other thing I'd say is try to do stuff locally. Just try to get something going in your kind of really regional zone. That seems kind of the only way to combat the way things are. But in a more general way, what I usually say is just really try to enjoy making the stuff because I feel like making the thing has to be its own reward. Uh, and if you can get that going, you kind of can't lose because making the stuff just feels good and kind of, for me, takes me from one day to the next and makes it easier when you feel like you're not so focused on the bottom line. But as you said, I am lucky to have kind of a bunch of road under me already, so the kind of calculus of the whole thing's a bit different for somebody like me than it is for the bands just starting out. And yeah, it seems really tough. I don't know how you do it without really just kind of playing the content game. I wish I was good at that stuff, but talking to the camera as you're experiencing is really not my forte.
Doing great, man.
I have found I started making these little like looping videos on Twitter. Twitter's the one for me, my vice. These I would like whatever I was kind of working on that day. I would often at the end of it kind of make a little loop of it or something and try to get some kind of visual thing going. And I really enjoyed that, both making the things and kind of seeing people engage with them. So there is sides of it that I really like.
Yeah, I think that the thing is that if you're a new artist, as Noah said, it's a different situation, and I'd say you probably do have to do streaming. You can try and point people at more ethical streaming sites. There are plenty of places you can stream that actually have a much more ethical, better royalty rates or more realistic royalty rates. But I think the important things are try to do physical media as well, because you'll create this whole different interaction with people. I'm sure there's new wheels to be invented still, and I'd like to think the younger generations who are starting to get rid of their iPhones and stuff and going back to old-fashioned clamshell style phones where they're not being seduced into this addictive environment the whole time. I think they'll come up with stuff. I hope so. I think we both try and be really positive about these things, and you have to hope for the better rather than just say this is shit and it's gonna get
Yeah,
shit.
I mean, there's like a genuine like neo-Luddite movement amongst young people in New York City where I live right now, and it is, I think, really interesting thinking about where does music fit into this, because a lot of these young people are like realizing that they enjoy buying used CDs, or they like enjoy having a refurbished MP3 player, like, that it's actually more meaningful to them than having access to all the music in the world rented from a like global media company that is enriching, horrible people. Sorry, I have to ask a fact-checking question. Noah, did you say that you use twitter.com in the year 2026?
The app, yes.
The everything app?
X, everything app?
I don't call it X.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, I just had to check because I don't think I know anyone who still uses that website. So it's kind of like vintage.
Oh, man.
It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like probably really interesting, like anthropological.
I had to get off. I
too.
could feel my blood pressure rising just on that app alone. I don't know how you do it, man.
Well, I mean, small doses. You got to be. It's all this tech that we're talking about, AI, social media. It's really powerful stuff. And again, I don't think there's any kind of going back, but to be kind of wary of what it's doing and how it's doing it, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing, we don't expect by ourselves to change the world, but most of these problems were caused a little bit by all of us, and maybe we all have to take some responsibility in living our lives the way we think things might be better, and not forgiving ourselves our little using these things. But it's tough. I mean, it's been a slow seduction with many of these things, so it didn't start off as they're complex issues, definitely complex issues.
Well, speaking of complex issues, maybe I should get into my last question here. I'm very sorry, but I did want to ask you a question about AI. And it's a specific question. Like, as soon as we confirmed this interview, I thought this is an area of AI that I wanted to specifically get the two of your perspective on. There's like a ton of noise about this subject right now, but something that in the conversations about AI's impact on music that I've been hearing often, like not even from people who are evangelizing AI, but the people who are trying to put forward this sort of neutral perspective, like, oh, yeah, like, I don't know, AI is just another tool that should be considered in the context of all these other technological evolutions in music production. Something that comes off as an example a lot is sampling. And, sort of these like people pretending or suggesting they're neutral on AI, kind of like likening generative AI models to just like another form of sampling. And as artists who have worked heavily with sampling over the years, I would love to kind of like get your response to that assertion that AI music models powering prompt-based generation platforms like somehow fall within this lineage.
I mean, it's complicated too because I feel like I'm not a big fan of the generative AI. I should say that's sort of that feels kind of like the least exciting part of the whole thing. But do you know Holly
Yeah,
Herndon?
of course.
Yeah.
She and Matt, I enjoy hearing what they have to say about the subject, but I don't use the stuff when I make stuff. I haven't yet, anyways. And I gather that it's widely used across music, but I can't say that I've really experienced it too much. But I also get the sense that it's kind of being baked into a lot of the tools that I use. There's a thing in the DAW I use now where it'll analyze the tracks and color code them kind of automatically without asking me, which I find sort of annoying. But I just get the sense that it's sort of like behind the scenes being pumped into all these different areas. Again, it feels like there's kind of no going back, but I can't say that I use the stuff to make things.
I mean, it's heavily pushed and marketed and being bolted on all over the place where it really isn't needed. If this was an impact-free thing, then who cares? But it isn't. It's far from being an impact-free thing. So I have big problems with that for sure. But I don't think sometimes people really don't realize what they're denying themselves from not. I believe that to get creative, the first thing you have to do is get bored, and then you start to sort of get creative and look for how you can do something fun and interesting. And for me, all that being denied by just prompting something to spit something out. I also think, I mean, computers have always been artificial intelligence. That was Alan Turing's original mission. He was trying to mimic the brain of a friend of his, right? A childhood friend who died. It was always meant to be artificially intelligent. That was the... So I think there's a lot of hype and crap about it. I mean, it has been incredibly hyped and pushed by some of the people I would argue are the most toxic people this planet has ever seen. Absolute, sociopaths at the very least. And they just seem to have this crazy, destructive bent, and they don't care. It all comes down to money for them, I think. But essentially, people are just denying themselves living their lives. They're just sort of producing stuff that really isn't what society wants. What society wants is people who don't make any sense, who think entirely out of the box. And if you look at Salvador Dali or something, he wasn't looking around at what everyone else was doing and going, oh, yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. He might have, looked at the Italian masters, from the Renaissance and Hieronymus Bosch and people and, learned technique and stuff. But where that came from, his art, made absolutely no sense. And that, in a way, is what was so fantastic about it. And I don't know how you prompt something to do that. I don't know quite how do you get it to sort of predict the unpredictable almost.
I feel like that is something that comes up in sampling, though, right? Like a sense of unpredictability. I don't know. Like, could you talk about how you actually use sampling in your work compared to like prompting a system to just generate the thing you need?
Sampling is based on an appreciation of the music that you're sampling from. And, all music is about this conversation between musicians over the ages, from different cultures. And that's essentially what it's about. And I think people use samples because they really appreciate what's there. And it's a different kind of thing. You're not generating something, some sort of neutral artistic country. You're really aligning yourself with something. I think it's a very different mindset where it comes from.
It's also the act of creating something out of pre-existing materials, not just using pre-existing materials to make something of the same thing, right? I mean, like I've always considered Person Pitch to be like a Plunderphonics record plus the human voice, taking pre-existing phrases, entire loops of pre-existing music, but somehow at the end result is something entirely new and revolutionary for the time. And I have yet to see from something like Suno or the major players on the Gen AI like creating a new thing. It's just emulating what it's trained on. And that creation of a new thing, like you said, comes from appreciating the source material first and foremost as like a human listener with a brain and not just treating it as data.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like it's there yet, but they keep saying it just gets better and better. But
It's coming.
I guess I'll believe it when I see it.
When people buy into music, and musicians, birds of a feather naturally flock together, and people recognize people they think they're like or they aspire to be like. And I don't think anyone's ever going to do that with AI. You're never going to have the personalities. You're never going to have people like, John Lennon, or, some of these people who actually, use their position politically to try and really do benign things. I don't think that can't exist. So I think it's always, these two worlds are always never really going to meet, I don't think. But
Well, also just like in a legal sense, I mean, these models are being like, reimagined right now in these legal battles that are playing out with rights holders and tech companies. I just feel like it has so many implications for like people's understanding of what sampling is to have like the negotiations between rights holders and a tech company sort of like dictating how you can and can't reference someone's work or recall it or evoke it. It's like, and they're doing this under like a narrative that it is similar to sampling. So it just seems like very important to be able to articulate a difference between like make me something that sounds like the vibe of XYZ thing versus I'm actually going to work with the material of this artist that I think is, interesting and appreciate and make something new out of it. I don't know, it just seems so different.
yeah,
I think all of that kind of takes place on a non-sampling level too. I mean, people kind of imitate other bands or kind of ape stuff from other bands without using any sort of AI or sampling or any of that. So it's definitely seems like a really complicated thing. I will say that to your point about sort of the license holders and the companies and the suits or whatever kind of controlling all the thing. That's really why we stopped using sampling for this thing, because it was so annoying trying to get everything cleared for the last one. We were just like, no more of that. I think one of the songs it was right down to the wire. We kind of didn't think we were going to be able to put it on the record because we couldn't get clearance on it.
because this area of publishing has become a massive investment for people who realize it can be lucrative, I suppose, and want to invest in something, and they have absolutely no understanding of a way a song is written, the way you can you can use a sample and write a song that really has nothing to do with that. You know, it really doesn't have anything to do with the original song, but it does use that element of it. And sometimes they will say they want to own 100% of it because you used a tiny little piece of one of their songs when it doesn't bear any correlation to what you've actually created as a piece of art. And they have no understanding of it and they don't want to address it. And in some ways, I think it's really sad. I know most musicians, when asked about these things, say, hey, you know, we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. Do you think we invented the wheel? Where do you think we learned our trade from? We learned it from other people, you know, which is the interesting thing with, you know, the copyrightability of AI that I found highly ironic. Was they said, well, you can't copyright this because it's learned from other music. And it's like, well, that's fantastic, but all music is learned from other music. Everything is. This is a massive conversation that's been going on probably millions of years. So it was ironic to me that, you know, what was actually the core of how music is made was the reason why you couldn't copyright an AI piece.
Well, it's the flip side of that too, right? Like individual people have been like, sued and penalized and demonized for like stealing music for so long. And it's like, okay, individuals aren't allowed to steal music, but Suno is allowed to steal 10 million songs and use it for their product. And now the
Yeah,
major labels are like, well, that's cool as long as we can get our settlement check. Actually stealing music's fine. But if you're
yeah.
an individual, you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Which is kind of the same how Spotify became a thing because of the Wild West, where everyone for a decade or so was just downloading everything for free off the internet, and people weren't buying anything. And major labels did their crooked little deal with Spotify with their shares.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's just a big sort of uh distance between like Peter said, like the people owning the rights to these things now, like, all these private equity companies buying master rights and stuff like that, because the ability to not only sample but also just like extract data from someone's entire discography can be lucrative, but like the music itself is becoming less and less valuable on the personal level. It just feels like this distinct difference between, like, it's not a moral reason, it's not an artistic reason why people want to put, copyrights on it. It's like Liz said, like it's okay if you're making a deal, for the settlement check at the end, but it's not okay for you to use the snare drum of some song in this, because that is going to be pinged by our piracy algorithm and you're going to get flagged. It just feels like it has nothing to do with music anymore in the act of learning about music. Like you said, like this is how new music has existed for millennia, is just influence going in your brain and finding a way to churn out something new with that influence, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
when the financial aspect of the thing is at the top of the pecking order, bad stuff always happens.
Yep.
In anywhere, not just music. I think that's a huge problem, kind of everywhere you look.
Convenience is the other thing as well. I think that convenience kills in many. Nearly everything with humanity has ever done for convenience has been actually been toxic in the long run, and it seems like wrapping all our food in plastic is, it has a longer shelf life, and people don't really look into the long term. They don't think about how it plays out in the long term. So yeah, these are definitely, it's good to have a conversation about all this stuff.
Well, thank you both for joining us for a conversation about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think even what you were just saying about like the financial incentive being at the top of the pecking order, like it's just not to be a broken record, but I think it is another thing that I think of when I think of like the difference between something like a prompt-based generative AI model and like the art of sampling. It is like one is driven by an artistic impetus and one is driven by a financial opportunity, and they're just like completely different
Yeah.
paradigms, and it drives me nuts that these AI people like constantly use sampling as part of the narrative that they're sort of like using to make this like a normalized part of music culture. When I feel like, it deserves some demystification.
Yeah.
It's ahistorical, but these people aren't musicians or musical people, so they don't know this history, you know?
No.
No.
Well,
thank you guys so much.
Thank you
Seriously.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Critical Listening Podcast. The show was written and created by Liz Pelly and Max Alper, and produced and engineered by Nick Zanka. That's me. You can support the show by joining the Patreon at patreon.com/criticallistening, where you'll have early access to episodes before they hit the public platforms, as well as our Discord community. Our theme song is the track Talk to Me by the band Eraser, and this episode featured tracks from Panda Bear and Sonic Boom's new album, The Question of When, out now via Domino.